Good morning. Happy Blue Friday to all who celebrate. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and now Blue Sky at Hawk Blogger. And Friday means a couple of things. It means it's Blue Friday for during the Seahawks season. It also means that it's time to talk with our good friend, Mike Sando of The Athletic. Mike, last time we spoke to you, it was pre-Thanksgiving, even though the show happened post-Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was great. We had a quiet, not a ton of people, but it was real nice, and I love the time of year.
Awesome. Well, I know you've had a lot of big occurrences in your family, so I'm sure it was nice to get some family together and hang out. Speaking of family, there was a big addition in the Seahawks family this week as Mike Macdonald. We have a lot of Mikes, by the way, in my world.
It's like I'm in first grade again, Brian. There's like five of us in a 30-person classroom. I'm like,
it's probably not something that's been a rare occurrence for you across your life, I guess. But Mike Macdonald added, he and his wife Stephanie added Jack David Macdonald to the family this week. They had their first child. And I find this topic, first of all, it's just cool. Happy for them to do this. But I find this topic super fascinating because not only is it a wild experience to become a parent, as you well know, but to have that happen during the middle of an NFL season, during the middle of your first season as an NFL head coach, having it be your first child, and having it happen during a playoff race, during the week where you're preparing to fight for what will potentially be the division title game, that's a lot of humanity happening in a short period of time.
it really is. I think it's great that he was able to get, in the work week, these guys are really grinding. I mean, sometimes it's overborne, but as the head coach of a team, you're important, but you also probably can delegate more than some of the other guys. So it was great that he was able to go and be there, right? They weren't out of town or something like that could have made him miss it, right? If it was a game, what would you do as the head coach? Stay behind? It's a tough deal. Most people would just for sure be there for the birth, but it's a demanding job. So I thought it was great that he was able to get away, and be there for it. And then, yeah, his life is forever different now.
Do you, I mean, do you have much of an insight into what the parenting culture is in the NFL? And I'll give you a little bit more context. I was listening to Daniel Jeremiah the other day talk about when he first had a kid and he didn't have any experience with the NFL and he thought he would get some days off after the birth of his kid.
Yeah.
But there really wasn't there was kind of like, no, you're going to work the next day. And I mean, people that have, quote, normal jobs are used to parental leave now, and it's kind of an expectation. And what is like, has that changed at all? Do you know anything about what the parenting culture is?
Sure. I think it's definitely evolving societally, right? My son was born 2 days before a Seahawks preseason game, and it was a road game, and I missed that game, but it felt like it was like Dave Bowling was doing me a big favor. He like covered for me, like it seems ridiculous now. Like, what was I thinking? Right. But I took a few days, maybe I think it was, a Friday birth, a game Saturday or something. And then I was back writing by the middle of the week, probably, I would think. So, but I think anybody in any one of these buildings now, if you're having a child, they want you to be there with it. I believe that. But you're not going to take a bunch of time off. I don't think that would be happening. I think some coaches, for a birth, I think is a different thing than just going to be with your family for dinner or something, right? It's a way higher standard. So I think when you have a child, like people can do what they want to do. To be there for it. But I don't think Mike McDonald's not taking a week off, or somebody on the staff isn't taking a week off for that, probably.
I mean, it's
a man.
Yeah, sure.
I mean,
well,
we're
and
talking about mostly men coaching here, right?
at this point,
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if the NFL's really had to face that on the
Yeah.
female side.
The the culture of all of this though is interesting just in terms of family time. I remember
Hmm.
Bruce Arians used to say, "I'll fire you if you miss your kid's game or recital or whatever it is," right? But there's other people I know in the league, depending on who the head coach is, they feel like the head coach is monitoring the parking lot to see if you're there, and you almost have a better chance going and sneaking a workout than going to do something with your family. As odd as and dumb as that seems, that's the feeling some people could have at a place. Just the
That's
culture. I've heard
That's
of
kind of
that.
what I was curious about because my that is my feel as well, is that it's pretty frowned upon to take much time for family, and I think it's a macho culture, it's a bravado culture, maybe not quite as much as it was in the 70s, but it's certainly still, that's the expectation, and this is a high stakes business with a
Yeah.
lot of money on the line and a lot of integrated parts, and so when you're the head coach, I don't know that people really fully grasp how much you're sacrificing, how much you're signing up to set aside, and where people say, faith, family, friends, whatever your combination of things is, and whatever priority model is, you don't really get a lot of say in that. You are making the
Yeah.
decision when you become a head coach of an NFL team that coaching football is above pretty much everything else other than
Well,
these very high, like, singular moments.
yeah, but the staff may work more than that. I mean, the head coach can have some delegation,
Hmm.
more so than the other coaches. So, traditionally in the NFL, if you have a home game on Sunday, Friday afternoon, you may get some family and go out with dinner, that sort of a thing. You get
Hmm.
done with practice, you may get some time then. You may get some time on Saturday, but you're going to go to the team hotel. Even for a home game, you're staying with the team, and you have meetings that night, and you have a walkthrough and all that type of stuff. So you're sneaking some time here or there between that Friday evening, Saturday, then obviously Sunday and Monday, and you're back into the grind again. Um, you know, so obviously you have a kid. I mean, that's a different thing. But these guys are very much in that grind, and some of them are not. Depending on the building, some of them are not going home until 10 o'clock at night.
Hmm.
That could be a normal type of a tempo. So it depends on the building. Like I know guys who work at other places who feel like, hey, this is a little bit more a little bit more of a relaxed environment. I think like when Ron Rivera was with the Commanders, it didn't feel quite as stressful as it could if you were like working with Bill Belichick or somebody, right? There's just
Hmm.
different guys have a little bit of a different tempo uh, to all of that stuff. And I think that there's a general culture in the league, but it varies definitely in terms of the tenor and the tone based on who that coach is and how afraid you are of the coach, right? There's a fear-based
Yeah.
culture in the league a
Yeah.
lot of the
Well,
time.
well, and last thing I'll just say on this is, obviously having worked my career in the corporate world, I got exposed up to the top of very large companies, and one of the things I noticed was the difference between a maybe director or VP and a CEO, a C-level executive, was how many nannies they had. Like the amount of outsourcing of parenting that happens the higher up you go in the organization was real. Like there just was not a way to be
Yeah.
responsible for what you were being asked to be responsible for during your workday and be a present parent. And for me, that was a deciding factor of like, I don't want to move that high up. That's not like, I want to be a present parent. That's a big part of what I want my life to be around. And so I do find it interesting, like how many of these people, how many of these guys, how many of these wives know what they're getting into versus like,
Yeah.
they kind of like they want to do this and then they realize afterwards what they have to sacrifice in order to do it. And for the most part, I think people know, but there is a human side of this where once you're in it, that's your lifestyle, and it can be pretty corrosive.
I know a lot of people. This is my impression, not scientific at all.
Hmm.
My impression is that there's a fairly high instance of kind of spouses living parallel lives, even,
Hmm.
where there's not that connection that you can only get from being together a lot,
Right.
right? That distance creeps in if you're just never doing the day-to-day stuff together, right? And I know some of those people who have been coordinators and things, and it feels like they're married, but they're not together. And I think there would be real challenges. And I think that's true for, like you said, in other professions too. We all sort of, struggle or think about the idea of what is the price to be great at something or to really climb, right? What do you have to do? What has to be given up? The idea that you can have it all is, no, probably not how it is, right? There's some kind of a trade-off. Even if you are going to be present physically, you're not going to always be present mentally if you're just completely driving on, some sort of a career, whatever it is, right?
Exactly.
You want to be the top attorney in this state. Do you have to be available on weekends at 10 p.m.?
Yeah.
I would think you do.
Yeah, yeah, that is just I think something that is universally a decision people make and a prioritization people make. So, It's a big part of how I've evolved in my life, and so I always find it interesting in these unique professions, some of these quiet decisions, and kind of changing gears here, Mike. I want to get to talk about some of the great articles you wrote and content you wrote this week. Before we get there. Mike Macdonald and John Schneider impacted some other people's lives. They kind of impacted their own.
Yeah.
For the really second, third, depending on how you want to count it, time this year, they have cleaned house. They did it at the linebacker position. They did it at other positions. They've kind of kept moving on the offensive line, and they've moved at different defensive pieces. The special teams were a calamity on Sunday against the Jets, and that was enough to where D. Williams and Laviska Shenault are no longer on this team this week. So the Seahawks have completely changed over their return team 1 week before a big game against the Cardinals. I'm kind of curious what your reaction is just from the meta level, seeing that this coaching staff is kind of taking it that seriously and making that level of move.
I think it's great. Now, I also think of how terrible it would be to be one of those guys being cut.
That's right.
There's a human component of it too. That's actually the first thing I thought of is like, that has to suck. You feel like you blew the game, even though they won, and then you're worried about this, and then suddenly they come in and tell you you're gone. That can't be a comfortable deal. But I think, as a coach, accountability is a big part of what's going on here. I think to be credible as a coach, the players have to feel at some level you care about them. They have to feel that you can make them better, through their coaching scheme, whatever. And they have to know there's accountability, right? So I think when there's extreme problem in performance and it's tolerated for a long time, that is worse than not tolerating it. Now, the question is, when do you make a move and who do you do it with? And I think in these cases, they were not, the longest tenured people that had a lot of equity built up. Right? These are people still trying to prove themselves to the new coaching staff, and they had catastrophic failure in this case. And then the linebacker one was a little bit more of we couldn't always tell who was fully at fault for what, but they did. I kind of like it. I think it's much better than the opposite feeling of like just letting. Like if you're letting things happen, you're sort of coaching it, right? If you're if you're not having accountability. So we'll see. Maybe, maybe this is going to be how it is with real accountability.
I mean, I look at this roster, Mike, and the starters. Not everyone kind of changes over the back end in the practice squad, and there's kind of churn there over time. But you've got Roy Robertson-Harris, Josh Jobe, Kobe Bryant's now a starter who wasn't. You've got two new linebackers. You've got, you have your third starter at right guard, and those are at least most of them have not been injury-based changes. I'm probably missing a couple on defense as I think through it, but and then you've got two new kick returners. Like, that is a significant portion of your starting players on a roster. That feels like more than is typical or more than is even like, it seems in the percentiles, the small percentiles of teams over the course of a season. Do you think that's right, or is this
Yep.
more typical than I'm giving it credit for?
No, I think it is more. I think it's first year stuff, right? Coming in,
Hmm.
figuring out who you like and don't like, and having it be more performance based than equity based, right? There's no equity with anybody. So, and then I think defensively they had a lot of, it's a new scheme. It wasn't a good defense, right? You're already
Hmm.
probably changing some stuff out. So I can look at that. That's interesting. I can look at like in the number of starters. It gets a little hard though, like you said, because of injuries. How many changes are made just because you're making a change, and this does feel like more to me.
Yeah, yeah. It feels like in season to have that. Like I certainly in a first year, first time coach, new schemes. You generally the off season after you'll see like a lot of turnover. They won't keep
Yeah.
some guys all figured out, but they seem to be making more changes in season than I think I'm accustomed to seeing. And as we've talked about on this show before, most of those have worked out well for them. So there hasn't been a lot of situations where they've taken a step backwards after these changes. Seahawks have to hope that that's the case in the return game. Jalen Darden, the guy that they signed from Cleveland, he has 115 kick or punt returns and has not muffed one of them or fumbled one of them. Jinxes aside, I think that the Seahawks will just settle for getting the ball back after they stop the opposing team or after the opposing team scores after what happened Sunday.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable to win
Yeah.
that game. It's really something.
Being there, Mike, and watching it happen, going into that game, I expected the Seahawks to lose that game. I didn't think it was a good matchup for Seattle, and to have all of that go wrong and for them to still win, I don't know if I'll see
Leonard
another
Williams,
game
man.
that weird.
Leonard Williams, man. It's unbelievable what he did in the game.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is why we watch. This is what keeps us coming back. All the things
Yeah.
that change. I mean, that was as there was as many things that happened in that game that will never happen again and have never happened before. And we'll probably watch another game where that will be the case, this week.
The league is the games are filled with scenarios you don't encounter again. I think people don't realize that when you turn all the dials, even on situationally, down distance, score
Hmm.
differential, all those things. Because I'm the type of person who looks for precedent in these things. Hey, let's look at all
Yeah.
the times this happened. And sometimes you're like, it'll be a big ending to a game. And you're like, all right, I'm going to dial up all the times in the last 25 years something similar happened, and you find one.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable.
it
So
is.
many
Well,
combinations.
that is a good chance to talk about a decision made last night for the Lions versus the Packers. What a fantastic Thursday night matchup that was. And Thursday night football in general feels like it's found its legs a little bit. The quality of the games it's not just the teams that are playing, but I think players and coaches have found a little bit of their footing to be able to produce quality games on short notice or on short weeks. But that was a fantastic game, and ultimately Dan Campbell makes a decision. He makes two different decisions. He makes a decision to go for it on his own, like 30-yard line earlier in that game, does not get it. Packers go score a touchdown to take the lead. He makes a decision at the end of that game to go for it when they were in field goal range to take the lead. And that's one of the few times you'll ever see a coach go for it and the actual statistical models saying, do not go for it, kick the field goal. So this was, I mean, you don't get to say if something was truly courageous or aggressive very often anymore. This was a true example of that. What did you think of what you saw in that game?
Yeah, I guess more power to him, but I think that last one was just curious to me because it's a
Hmm.
95% field goal make from that area of the field, 95%. So, and you're indoors, you got to feel great about it. Your kicker's a high percentage kicker, so you're really, what's your odds of making the first down, right? Maybe he feels it's probably in a 1 yard to go. The last 2 years in the league, it's a 71% conversion, which takes into account all the times people felt good enough about getting it to try.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't know, a 70% chance of getting a chance to make a 95% field goal again with certainty of winning versus a 95% chance of taking the lead with what's your probability of winning when you have a 3-point lead and the other team's at 30 seconds or whatever. It'd be low 30s probably.
Hmm.
I think that one was that last one was risky, more than aggressive to me.
Yeah, well, it's certainly interesting for Seahawks fans who've been seeing their team struggle in short yardage situations all year long, and but have had a coach that's been pretty aggressive going with the numbers and making those decisions as
Sure.
well. I kind of feel like when I watch Dan Campbell, I think first of all, love the Lions, have loved the way they built that roster, love the way they play, love the way he coaches. It feels like he could be the reason, setting aside his overall coaching, but his fourth down decision making could be the reason they win a Super Bowl. It could be the reason they lose a Super Bowl.
Sure. And I think he's willing to live. I mean, this guy's come back from the dead. Think of what his record was, early on, like
Hmm.
4-19 or something. So I think it's a big part of their persona, the belief in him, and he has a good team. He has a good offensive line, and so a lot of these fourth down situations, he's got a really good chance and a good. He's also got a really good play caller. So you got veteran quarterback, maybe a top five play caller in the league, a top three offensive line in the league, and you're the type of guy who really sells to your guys that we're going for it. I think he wants that aggressive mindset on his team. Couldn't you see Jared Goff as somebody who's a little timid, possibly just by
Hmm.
nature? Could you see that?
Hmm. For
When you
sure.
really buy in, like he's got the whole team with their t-shirt sleeve rolled up with a pack of cigarettes in it, and they're all walking around with
Yeah.
swagger. And
Uh-huh.
there's just a question of where is that line uh, before it's a little too much and unnecessary. And I think he straddled, he straddled that line. He walked up to that. It could have cost him. If he missed it, they may still win the game anyway.
Hmm.
It's still a tie game. But you're right. I think he opens up the possibility when you're too far in variance on either side of what is seems prudent, then you just open yourself up to being the reason why something good or bad happens. So that's all that is. I think if he makes a 4th and 1 decision that they lose the Super Bowl on, as long as it's not one like that, right? As long as it's a 4th and 1 where you could make a great case for going for it, I don't think that's as bad. I think if you do it, if this were the Super Bowl, they didn't get it and they lost the game, you live with that in a different way, and that's where you open up your risk for things like what happened to Seattle when they handed off to Marshawn Lynch, whether it was a good play
Hmm.
or not. It becomes a defining moment for your team in a frustrating manner. That's I think you'd have to look out for in making an outlier type decision in a big moment, as opposed to just hey, we're going for it because the chart said.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's a lot of interesting connections to the Seahawks this season and Seahawks overall and those decision making moments. I'm working on an article right now that I was going to have done yesterday, but thanks to all the special teams changes, I changed course. So I'm working on it today. But one of the highest leverage moments for the Seahawks this season was a fourth and goal from the 1 yard line against the Bills, where just like in this one, their
Yeah,
center stepped on Geno Smith. Geno Smith falls down and is tackled, and they, instead of going ahead 10-7 in that game, don't score. Jared Goff trips, is able to hand the ball off somehow without being touched, and they get a first down. They win the game. So,
yeah,
a lot of interesting things going on there. By the way, if you didn't know this, Mike, the Seahawks are one of only four teams in the NFL this year that on third or fourth and short and goal to go, so 2 yards
yeah,
at the 2 yard line or
yeah.
closer, they've not converted a single one this year in six tries. So that is a huge difference between this team, the 2005 team running behind Walter Jones and Steve
Oh
Hutchinson,
yeah.
the 2014 team that ultimately had that big moment in the Super Bowl, but had Marshawn Lynch. They were seventh in the NFL that year in converting those situations. So
Yeah,
it's a big difference.
it is. And I remember covering that team. We used to chart it because they were like at one point, 27 out of 28, or it was an
Yep.
amazing amount. But I mean, they had a Hall of Fame running, and they had a Holmgren had been there for years. I mean, they really had a well-oiled machine. I think when I was looking, so I went and look at some of these plays for Seattle. I think we got to put a couple of buckets. I think there's maybe since the San Francisco game when you have Abe Lucas back and now there's a center change.
Hmm.
I want to start the clock on these short yardages a little bit then, and that would be, that would be week 11 to now, and just looking with 1 yard to go, they're 3 of 5 converting with on 3rd and 1 since then,
Hmm.
and they're 1 of 3, which is bad, on 4th and 1. So if you factor in, if you take the whole season before that, which just takes me a second to hit this button, they would be they 5 of 9 on 3rd and 1 and 4 of 8 and 4th and 1. That's better than I thought, but they're still low. You need to be
They
doing better
started
than that.
out the season. I went for 2 yards or less in my
Yeah.
queries, and they started off the season like 75%. They were fifth, tied for fifth best through week 5. They were
Okay.
fifth best in the NFL. Since then, since week 6 on, they are dead last in the NFL in those
Yeah. Now
situations.
2 yards brings in 3rd and 2 is a pass down, a little
Hmm.
bit. So 2 yards is a little bit different. I think 1 yard is more of a measure of can we line up and get a yard,
Yeah.
when people know we're going to do. And then within that, the teams look at it, is it inches, is it long yard? Those are different nuances, but there's no question. I think don't we just feel like their orientation is not set up to be good at it, right? Just from the way that they're kind of finesse in their use of personnel and formation and some of that stuff. I have felt some of those quick hitting, Max Strong style inside handoffs to the up back have like
Hmm.
had a better chance of not having a guy hit for 3 yards loss.
Yes.
Something
Yes.
quick like that, but
Yes.
it's tough.
There are definitely a bunch of factors there, but as we talk about that NFC North, like Detroit and that NFC North battle from last night with the Packers, you wrote about that division doing things that really has never been done.
Oh yeah.
And not only did it catch my interest just because it was an interesting article, but the division that was the second most standout over history was the 2013 NFC West, which Seahawks
Yeah.
fans know really well.
Yeah, with obviously the Super Bowl Seahawks, you had the Jim Harbaugh 49ers. I think Bruce Arians was there with Arizona. So, yeah, the NFC North this year has the best point differential per game outside the division when they play other teams than any team since at least 1970. It's a lot of divisions. So, the number
Hmm.
two was 2013 NFC West, which we remember as dominant. Those were really good teams, with Seattle and San Francisco really coming into their own. So, it could be amazing to be in that NFC North this year. If you're Minnesota, you're just like, what do we have to do to win a division, right? I mean, or Green Bay for that matter.
You also wrote about some QBs and their futures and what's going to be happening. And
Yeah.
there's one in particular that I know a lot of Seahawks fans are watching with keen interest, and that's
Hmm.
Russell Wilson, who had a monster
Yeah.
game this past weekend. Uh, Talk a little bit about what you're seeing from Russell Wilson, what it's done for his career, and where you think he'll potentially end up next year.
I think he's going to stay with Pittsburgh unless, it just falls apart. I think he at this stage would realize after what he's been through that where you're at matters a great deal, right? I think he had a great thing in Seattle till he didn't. Right at the end, it
Hmm.
was messy, it was ugly. We can blame whoever for this or that. Then he went to Denver for the big money and really kind of got burned. And some of it his own doing. Obviously, it was well documented, but real negative situation. He's got to have an appreciation for Mike Tomlin, for what this is, for having a good defense on your side. I think he's played better. Now, they played Cincinnati. They're terrible on defense. They have games against tougher defenses. So he's going to have a bad game, or he's going to, it's not going to just be easy every week. But I think he's played better. I think he's gotten better as he went. If you take his numbers through 6 starts, it projects to like 27 or 4,700 yards over a season. That'd be a career high for him. It projects to 28 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 100 passer rating. Well, that's what he did in Seattle. So I think he's reborn. I think this is a great opportunity for him. I think he's was on his way to the Hall of Fame, and that got a little sideways. But this gives him an opportunity, I think, to sort of cleanse his career a little bit from the last whatever it is, 3 years, and maybe end on a better note.
Yeah, that's exactly where my mind went, Mike, is it had gotten bad enough that I thought the Hall of Fame was a real question, maybe even an unlikely to be an outcome for him. the way he's playing now, I think there's a chance that he has already revived that, and if he's able to sustain that for another year, even just another year, if he can win a playoff game, if he can just be a kind of Pro Bowl quality quarterback, I think you got to really like his chances of being a Hall of Fame kind of player.
Yeah, well, I think of this though too. Let's just say his career had ended after Denver and a real down note, and people are questioning Hall of Fame. I think the way the Hall of Fame works, though, and I am a selector, there's a 5-year waiting period, which is hugely helpful. In the moment, you're like, oh, Russ, Pete falling apart, Sean Payton. When you get distance from all that stuff and really look at what he accomplished over his career, it looks better than it does at the end when you're at the scene of the accident, right? The bumpers are off on the road and there's glass everywhere. We're like looking at a terrible calamity. That's not what his career is, even if it ended after Denver. He had a great career. So I think his Hall of Fame chances would have rebounded anyway, just with the passage of time. We could process this whole thing. Now, when you write a successful last chapter, I think it helps it even more. It like heals it before the 5-year waiting period. Then the 5-year waiting period probably helps him more.
Well, and as you kind of look at some of these numbers for him this year, 8.7 yards per attempt is his career best, and I think that might actually be leading the league in that category.
Yeah, Goff is up there too. Yeah.
271 yards passing per game is a career high. His passer rating's back up over 100, which is where it always was with Seattle. His touchdown to interception ratio has always been pretty good. He's been a good player at protecting the ball. He's doing that again. So he's having not just, and also I think one of the things that's interesting is his sack rate is down a little bit.
That's what I was just going to check. I wanted to see what it is. What is it? And what
his
was
sack
it
rate is 8.7%, which is still high, but the last 2 years it had been over 9 and then over 10. So, it's not going to be, he's never going to be a low sack quarterback. That's just not who Russell Wilson is. But he's getting certainly more back into his parameters of the type of play. Yeah. Do you think you've seen a player rebound like him? Can you think of somebody as you were writing this that he reminded you of?
Oh, just somebody who was like a great top quarterback who had some bad years and then rebounded it.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
I feel like it usually only goes one way, right? It usually once it starts down, it just continues going down.
Well, the way to do this is just to really look at some names, and I won't take too long, but I'm just going to look at the all-time passer.
Yeah, I mean, as you're looking, I'll talk about some people that come to mind, like Kurt Warner maybe in New York versus when he went to Arizona, maybe.
Carson Palmer had a nice one with Arizona.
Carson Palmer would be another one, maybe.
Palmer went off the rails. He was really good with the Bengals, then had a decline with the Raiders. Vinny Testaverde probably had a rebirth or two late in his career.
Yeah.
But
someone in chat said Joe Flacco, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know if I see it the same way.
I don't think Flacco's been quite as good lately, but it's a good example.
Yeah.
As I go through some of these guys, Matt Hasselbeck had a little bit of a rebirth with Indy, but I don't think it was quite. It was more of you felt like he was filling in. Did it?
Right.
Did Alex Smith get it back with Andy Reid after having a fall apart, or not really? He didn't really fall apart. He just lost his job to Kaepernick, right?
Right.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Ryan Tannehill had fallen off.
That's a good one. That's a good one because then he turned right back around and fell apart again.
Yeah, but we're talking Russell Wilson was a really good player for 10 years almost, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and then falls off with age being a factor, right? It would be kind of like if Cam Newton was having a good year right now or something, right? Somebody like that who was a good quarterback. And I'm scrolling through here. I'm at number 55 on the all-time passing lists. I don't necessarily see something, Randall Cunningham had a little bit of a rebirth late. I'm just not, I'm sure there is somebody. But
yeah, I see in chat some people
thing.
Are saying Sam Darnold. Well, Sam Darnold, I don't think he wasn't great to begin with, so I wouldn't say that. Baker Mayfield, I don't think Baker Mayfield was great. I think he's playing better now than he did earlier in his career, so I don't think those are necessarily.
This is great. I'll find it. This is a good note. I could find it, but I think you have to say, a certain number of good seasons. You have to be like a top quarterback for a long time. Not just somebody who had a career, a
Right.
late developing career. That's not what this is. This
Like
is
you could say
somebody who
Ryan
got
Fitzpatrick, like, but like again, like not that's not the same kind of. You're talking about a Hall of Fame level guy that then became a joke in the league, literally
yes.
a joke, and expected to maybe if he didn't work out in Pittsburgh, he may not get a job.
And before the season in Pittsburgh, we're thinking, you know what, 50-50, he even stays the starter.
And
This
then
guy's
yeah,
kind of lost it.
right, like during the season, Justin Fields comes in and they win, and it's like there are people, a lot of Pittsburgh fans that did not want Russell Wilson to come and take. Like they're like, we're fine with Justin Fields. He's younger, he's more athletic now. Like I don't think anyone in Pittsburgh feels that way after the weeks that he's put together as the starting quarterback.
Yeah, and I scrolled through a lot of guys here, so I don't think there's a. Now look, he's back for 6 games, so did
Yeah,
somebody come back and have 6 good games? That's a different thing. We're sort of projecting that he's saved the career, and that he's going to be good for the next season too. But yeah, he had quite a lull there. Although, really, if we just zoomed out and didn't know anything, we looked at his stats from last year, you'd say, what are you talking about? He's the same as he was last year, almost, right? The TD and INT was fine last year, right?
it was great. It was great, but
So
if you watched him play, it was not
it
the
was
same
terrible.
player. Yeah,
It was not good. And I feel like he did. When I watched him now, I don't feel like it's all just stats and not totally misleading. I feel like he's, playing better again.
absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's something that a lot of Seahawks fans are following, and there's some Seahawks fans that are in the camp of, well, maybe they bring him back next year, maybe they move on from Geno Smith. I don't think that that's going to happen for a number of reasons, but I'm happy for
Yeah.
Russell Wilson that he has gotten to the point that I think for me as a football watcher, his 414 yards, like when you put up 400 yards in a game, I don't care how bad the defense
Yeah.
is, that was a different level of Russell Wilson productivity than he's done for years. So I was
Especially,
happy
yeah.
for him to see that happen.
And unlike Jameis Winston, who did that with 2 pick sixes, his pick six really wasn't his issue. The
Yes.
DB pushed down the receiver, and it was kind of unfortunate. So I'm with you. We'll see. It was Bengals. They're going to find out what they need to know the rest of the year because they do play some tough defenses. And if he falls off, that's information too. But I think it looks really good for him right now, and the good for him.
I'm getting some questions in chat for you, Mike, about eggnog because I've been asking people their
Oh
take
yeah.
on eggnog. I need to know how you feel about eggnog.
I can't stand it. Now, I haven't tried it for a long time, but I'm like the type of person who could slug down anything on a bed or something and like not be sick. I think I could gag drinking eggnog.
I get it. I get
I
it.
mean,
I'm gonna.
I could take medicine with no water, or I could take pills and swallow them with no water. I'm not one of those person who's queasy. I feel like it just is not good.
You are not alone. You're certainly not alone. It is a divisive topic, and we just needed to know where you fall on it. So we're talking to Mike Sando of The Athletic. Can I ask you a couple more questions before you got to run,
Sure.
Mike?
Yeah.
So we're talking about QBs and your article on QB futures that's out on The Athletic now. And we talked about Russell Wilson. You think he's going to be back with Pittsburgh. I think that makes sense. Matt Stafford is another name that I think is interesting this year. And I
Yeah.
don't think it's as clear what's going to happen there. What's your
Yeah.
expectation on what the situation is there for LA?
I agree. I put him in the committed and content with no guarantees. I didn't want to just say that I think he's not going to be there, but like I'm not going to be surprised if there's a change there. Some of it is, you know, he's older, it's a lot of money, and where are they as a team, right? If they miss the playoffs or feel at the end of the year that he's been fine, but he's not good enough to really carry them while they're a younger team and they're just going to be caught in the middle, then what do they do? I think they're an organization where, the coach and the GM are safe. Like they don't have to manufacture an extra couple wins, or they don't have to deceive themselves or trick the owner into that we're good when we're not. So I think that would be interesting to just see how they feel at the end of the year about their team, where they're headed, what he offers, where's he at in this life cycle. Uh, as far as what decision they would make. Because last year he approached them, I believe, and wanted a different contract. They gave him a bunch of money, but they made it a situation where he doesn't have a lot of money after this year coming that's guaranteed. So I thought they were buying themselves some flexibility. To me, it was just a little bit of a tell that, okay, watch this situation. I don't feel like he's on his way out for sure or anything like that, but I'm with you. I think you put a little check mark by it and go, okay, let's see what they do.
Well, and unlike Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford is having a down year. Like his, by almost any measure, he is not. Like he had a great season last year. I thought it was a very underrated season. I thought he was one of the best quarterbacks, pure throwers of the football in the whole NFL last year. That hasn't been the case so far this year, and that's even with him getting those, big receivers back and Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. So you got to wonder at his age, with a little bit of his injury history, and then with a little bit of a slowdown in play, is this the right thing for that franchise to bring him back, or should they be investing in someone that can be part of their future?
Right. I think I don't think he's totally fallen off. I mean, I don't think he's been bad, but I don't think he's elevated either. So what is the value there for them? And when is the point you could jump off? Do you anticipate and get off a year earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
And make the decision at maybe at the right time? Like look at Minnesota, right? They had a pretty good year from Kirk Cousins. Now he was injured, but that looked like now in retrospect the right time to move away, or they could have done it even a year earlier. Uh, so, at that age, I think his health down the stretch, he has not missed games. So I think that works in his benefit, to his, they're not overly worried about that. But yeah, I think it's a fair thing to just have on our
It's
radar.
part of the reason it's interesting, not just because they're in the division, but there's a similar kind of roster building decision to be made. LA's got a very young core on defense that is playing pretty well and looks promising. They've got some young players on offense, and Nakua and Kyron Williams, and they have this older quarterback. Matthew Stafford's 36. Well, who does that sound like? Seahawks have a young core on defense that is playing pretty well. They have some young players on offense that they're going to want to potentially lock up, and they've got an older quarterback. Now he's 34, so he's a couple years younger than Matt Stafford, and is actually playing relatively well, even though the numbers don't always support that. There's a roster decision there to make, and both of these teams are going to have it. So you talked about Russell Wilson. You talked about Matt Stafford. Where do you think Geno Smith is similar or different?
Well, the difference between Geno Smith and Matthew Stafford is that Geno's contract is not as expensive. They have him under contract next year for a deal that's pretty good by quarterback standards, right? I think it's about $25 million or so they could have him for. So if the Rams could have Matthew Stafford for $25 million next year, that looks pretty good to me. I think the difference is, Stafford's at a little bit higher level than that, and it's a little more expensive, and he's older further down the road. So the Geno thing's interesting to me because I kind of felt coming into this year, I wondered where it was going to go. And I think if you had told me, I didn't know anything else, if you had told me his stat line at this point, I probably would say, wow, I would think there could be a change. But I don't feel in watching them that he's holding them back. I don't feel like that. I feel like he's worth he's a good value for what they're paying him. Do you agree?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's still a debate that rages on with a lot of Seahawks fans and a lot of analysts. But as far as the quality of quarterback play, they are getting. I called it, and it got a lot of interesting conversation going about it. I think it is still one of the best free agent contracts in the last 3 years. For how important that position is, for the level of play you've gotten and the return for what you paid. You got at least minimum, you got top 13 quarterback play for $25 million a year. And if you look at quarterback contracts, that's an absolute steal.
I think the interesting question is going to be, what do they do offensively in the offseason? What level of change is there? And then how does that affect the players that are on the team, right? Including Geno. As far as what course are they going to set, right? What's their sort of philosophical decision at the end of the year? Is it to go, hey, you know what? Let's go younger on offense right now. And, you could see that with some of the younger players they've got. Let's build it around these guys.
That very clearly for me feels like a mistake but it doesn't mean that
Yeah.
that won't happen. I mean, if they were to, for example, jettison Geno Smith and start Sam Howell, who they traded for, who's the younger player, and draft somebody who could be an understudy, this team is
Yeah.
significantly less likely to contend for a division. And I think you're going to really challenge the locker room and give the coaches a lot of trouble. So it seems
You
like
think
at
so?
least I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, okay. I felt a little bit better about Howell when they got him. I felt like Howell was just thrown in the pool to drown without knowing how to swim with Washington, and I
That's
felt like he
part of
was
it.
he had something. I think if Geno was there in Washington last year, he would have had a tough year too.
It would have been tough. It would have been better. I think Sam Howell has some specific areas of development that are different than
Yeah.
Geno's areas of development that make
Yeah.
him more likely to be sacked, make him more likely to throw passes that are going to be intercepted. But he does other things positively. So, yeah, it is an interesting question. I don't have claim to know what John Schneider's thinking, but for the first time
Yeah.
in his career,
Yeah.
he has the decision-making authority that if he wants to go with the younger quarterback, and remember, this was the guy well before Pete wanted to move on from Russell Wilson and was overruled by Pete Carroll in that situation.
Yeah, but he's also the driving force in drafting Russ, too. So,
Hmm.
um, you know, I don't know about that whole context. I I just I for some reason I had in my mind like this that Geno's contract was coming to more of a head, this offseason, but why is it? To me,
Well,
he's
from the
totally a
team's
reasonable price.
perspective, yeah, from the team's perspective, it's not. They have all the leverage, Mike. You have an aging quarterback who's under contract for a good number. What's your reason? Even if you decide to let that play out and he plays really well, you could franchise him for a year if you really wanted to do that because the cap opens up for
Yeah.
them that time. And he'd be 36 at the end of that, and they'd still have a
And
lot of
he's
leverage.
and he's valued more by Seattle than the rest of the league. There's a lot of
He
people
is.
when I do quarterback tiers, he's exactly a 3.0, and no one like gives him flowers above that when most people here, especially in the media and some fans, think that he's better than that. So,
Yeah.
they're yeah, I think they're in a good position, and I'm with you. I think he's pretty good. I think he's better than what he's getting paid.
100%. Last thing, Mike, Geno Smith is going to go into Arizona this week, a team that he has not lost to. There was a lot of conversation about how he had never beaten the 49ers, but he has not lost to the Cardinals. Not nearly as impressive knowing how the Cardinals have been of late. But if I told you before the season that the Seahawks would play the Cardinals in week, what is this, 14 for the division title while the 49ers were languishing in last place, what would you have told me?
I would have said, well, there must be a bunch of injuries on the 49ers, and Arizona is a little bit of a surprise team. So those two things were, I did not bet that these things would happen, but my number one concern for 49ers was their age and injury with some of these guys. And then Arizona was my sleeper team and that I thought could be better because people were uh, off of Kyler Murray way too much. Like
Hmm.
his reputation was way worse than how he actually was coming back healthy. So I'm still surprised. I'm still surprised that all of those things would happen in the same year. But as you look at it, you can kind of see uh, like each situation was plausible, even if unlikely, right? Even
Hmm.
if not the majority thing that could happen. So here we are. I think it's the biggest leverage game for playoffs. It's a huge game, like you mentioned from Geno's standpoint. It's a huge game for this offense
Hmm.
because you feel like the defense is going to give you a good game, and it did last time, wasn't it? 16-6. We were
Yeah.
16-6 last time, and wasn't it close to being broken up? Did they have another red zone fiasco, like a bad snap or something, or
Geno Smith threw a red zone interception,
red
and
zone
the defense
interception?
scored 7 of those 16 points.
So they didn't do anything on offense,
No,
really.
no.
And that would be my concern going into this game is they're going to have a putting too much pressure on the defense. Now you're on the road, in a friendlier environment, and Kyler Murray's running around. So I think the impetus is going to fall on the defense again. I think can they get some hits on Kyler? Does their speed tracking him down? I feel pretty good about that from a Seattle standpoint. But this offense is really under scrutiny down the stretch
Hmm.
and is going to be the thing that either holds them back or lets them exceed expectations, don't you feel?
Yeah, and I've got some more coming for folks on that. I didn't want to put you under the microscope again with more Ryan Grubb sound that you
Oh
hadn't
yeah.
heard before, but I asked him a couple questions yesterday about playing. Like he was asked about playing for a defensive head coach versus an offensive head coach. I asked him about what's
Yeah.
it been like, working with a different head coach after having a lot of experience with the same one. So when things go a little bit south, you have some history together. His answers were pretty telling, and I think it's been a rough year for him. And so everyone's going to be focusing on, well, is Mike Macdonald going to bring him back? I think there's some question about whether Ryan Grubb will want to come back.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I did see some of that. Yeah, that's here's the thing. Your first staff as a coach is not your desired staff, right? You can't get everybody that you wanted. And Mike McDonald may not have even known for sure who all he wanted, but
Especially
like we
that
talked about
late,
before, yeah,
right?
that late. So, maybe it's not the fit that everybody wants. Ryan Grubb will have opportunities, certainly in college, but we'll see. The last month of the season, his ability to adjust and grow this thing, I do get the feeling they're not going to stick with something that they don't feel is going to work. And I think that have having a younger coach, and then I feel like John Schneider's a young GM still, even though he's no longer whatever 38 or 40 years old. I think he has a young mindset. Would you agree?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
John
for
has a
sure.
young mindset, so he's a younger soul. I think that can lead to a willingness to do stuff. One of the things that really can bother me watching teams is when coaches just stay with the comfortable or stay with the same guy, or the coaches are more comfortable with veteran players, and you don't have a willingness to change. So I think if they recognize something's not right and they're going to make a change, it's not a rash decision. That's a good sign.
It is, and it's going to be a fascinating end of the season. It's going to be a fascinating game this weekend. I think it's kind of a tier 2 kind of divisional
Yeah.
clash, right? Like it's not the NFC North.
No one outside these regions cares about
Probably
this.
not. I
No.
will say when I talked to Robert Mays, who's also with the Athletic, I think he sees it the way I see it, which is this is still a pretty good division, even though their numbers are what they are. The records are what they are. Part of the reason the records are what they are is guess which division they're up against this year?
I know.
The NFC
Yeah, the
North.
NFC North. You're right. Yeah, you're
So
right.
that doesn't
But
help.
Arizona has that big advantage of not having any of those games left, and that's why this game is so important to
This game
Seattle.
matters huge. But and it like good for Mike Macdonald, good for the Seahawks to have won enough after really blowing their season to make this game matter. And we'll see what they do. I will tell you, Mike, after a year of playing really poorly in the run game, they were poor run defense, and then they became very good. They've been very poor run offense. I think there's an opportunity. I think they're right about to get to the point where their run offense is going to break out. If that happens, could be a very interesting end of the year for the Seahawks.
That will be very interesting. I'm with you a little bit on that. I can see some of the things they're trying to do, and I think if they stick with them, they have a chance. But to see Kenneth Walker III be 30th among running backs in rushing yards this year, he's one spot behind what's his name in Jacksonville,
Tank Bigsby.
Yeah, he's behind him. Tank Bigsby started one game and has more rushing yards, I believe, this year. So that has to change.
Yeah.
Kenneth
Yeah.
Walker is not bad. Okay.
Kenneth Walker has the most forced missed tackles. He has 58, the most forced missed tackles in the entire NFL this year. Nobody has more.
So they've got to sync this thing up to where it goes to his strengths, and then he has to get comfortable with as they're making these adjustments. That takes time too. The back has to maximize whatever it is, but it just takes time to do it, and it feels like they're trying to adjust it on the fly. Can they do it effectively
That's
enough so
exactly
that
it.
hits like you said?
That's exactly it. And I've seen running games do that during seasons. It is one of those things where you need the offensive linemen together long enough with the play calls, repetition, doing it enough, and then all of a sudden it does click. And I think that you're hitting on exactly the right thing, which is Kenneth Walker is one of the most dangerous weapons that has been sheathed most of this season. And if they can get that going, that's going to really change how teams can play them on defense. It's going to unlock what they can do through the passing game. but they're going to stick with figuring out the run game until they get there.
If you could, if you were a Seahawk fan and you could say, I want to see one thing this week that's a little out of the ordinary, or dial up one spectacular thing. To me, it's not a Geno 300-yard passing day. It's not a JSN 100-yard game. It's a 150-yard game for Kenneth Walker III. If you could put that down, you'll be happy with whatever else happens almost in the game.
I think you're absolutely right. Thank you, Mike, for staying double time with us this morning. It always goes so fast, but Mike Sando of The Athletic, what should people check out from you coming up on The Athletic?
Yeah, well, that one on the 32 quarterbacks, check that out. That's today. And then my pick six column will be Monday. I better get working on something. I don't know what the angle's going to I may know what the angle's going to be. We'll see. But check that out on Monday on The Athletic.
All right. That is Mike Sando of The Athletic with us every Friday. Have a great weekend. We'll talk again next week, Mike.
You too. Thanks.
All right. That was Mike Sando of The Athletic. Great stuff from Mike, as always. If you haven't given the show a like and click subscribe, please do. Let me get to some of the super chats that I might have missed. Ryan Eddy is gifted 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. Ryan, thank you so much. Appreciate it. I saw your question, I think, as well, about whether I'm doing a get-together down in Phoenix. Unfortunately, like my schedules on these road trips are very tight. I'm trying to have the most minimal impact on my wife and kids as possible, or kid at home. So I kind of fly in, fly out, and so I don't have a lot of extra time, but hopefully if people want to reach out to each other, great way to do that is join over at patreon.com/hawkblogger. People can self-organize there on the Slack channel. There's also the community tab here on YouTube, and I think people should be able to organize there as well, I think. If not, let me know and we'll figure out something else. Old School Seahawk, it says you became a YouTube member, but I think you upgraded, and thank you for being a sweet member. Really appreciate your support. I know you had a voicemail for Mike Sando and Dave Bowling, but since we didn't have both of them this week, I'm going to hold on to that and try to remember to play it for them when I have both of them. And then Old School Seahawks with a super chat says, $12 that can only be spent on eggnog. Let's go Seahawks. Well, appreciate that. Thanks for the support, Old School. And then Ed Chan rejoins as a member. I'm not sure if it says new member. For me, if that's an upgrade, let me know, but appreciate your support. Yeah, so I'm going to be focusing on my short yardage article today. We did the short yardage deep dive on yesterday's show, and there's more that I've kind of uncovered as I'll go through it. I'm going to put it all in writing and get that out so people can kind of refer to it. But a lot of interesting stuff going on in that situation. I'll also, with my conversations with Jeff tomorrow, we're trying to find out what time that will be. Hopefully that will work out. If it's not Jeff, we'll have Nathan. But I'm going to probably want to play some of the sound from Ryan Grubb and some of the things that stood out to me there. So we'll talk about that. I've got some articles to write as well. I want to write about neutral script early down passing because that's something that stood out to me when I did my searching yesterday. I think there's a change afoot in the NFL that I at least want to get out there for conversation. So a lot of good stuff coming at hawkblogger.com. So make sure you check us out there. And then if you haven't already, consider going over to jkboots.com, use code hawkblogger, get 10% off your boots, plus enter for a chance to win this pair, not this exact pair, but it will look like this pair of Seahawks themed boots. Blue laces, you've got the green back, you've got the blue insole. This is a bison leather. This is like a serious boot. It's got an HB logo there as well, which is pretty cool. This will be one of a kind. You'll be the only person on the planet that has them. All you got to do is use code HawkBlogger to buy your own pair of boots, and you get potentially a second. That could be a gift. It could be for you, and also helps contribute to the Wildland Firefighters Foundation. We're thinking about doing something cool for when we get to 50 boots sold. We've been donating to the Wildlife Firefighters Foundation. Also thinking about giving away some Hawk Blogger swag, some sweatshirts, some t-shirts, some all sorts of cool stuff. So if people are interested, let me know what would be exciting as a gift giveaway if we get this continuing to go. So we want to celebrate along with you. So JK Boots, use code HawkBlogger as well. So, all right, folks, we will definitely continue counting down until this game against the Cardinals. I'll be flying out tomorrow afternoon, hanging out Saturday night with some friends, and then Sunday heading to the stadium for what will be a huge, huge game. I continue to feel really hopeful that the Seahawks run game is going to find its footing against what is a very good run defense for Arizona. So look, the Seahawks run defense was terrible for a long time. And then it found a stretch where it was going to have to play against a bunch of really good run offenses in LA, against the 49ers, against the Cardinals. Even the Jets run offense is pretty good, and they excelled. So the best way to prove that you have turned something around is to do it against a good team. And I think that if the Seahawks can run the ball against a very tough run defense in Arizona, I think they will have proven a lot. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. We'll see how that looks. I'm really looking forward to seeing Satala Omea's next game, and we'll go from there. All right, everybody, give the show a like and click subscribe if you haven't already. I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Hawk Blogger, as well as Facebook. And this has been episode 257 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.